Tensions in the Ukraine on the rise Friday. Government forces claim to have regained control of two airports in the Russian-speaking Crimean peninsula that had been seized by gunmen that officials in Kiev said had links to the Russian military. The announcement came as Moscow sent mixed signals about just how much it would interfere in its former Soviet partner after a week that saw the overthrow of the Russian-backed Ukrainian president. Russian President Vladimir Putin was also seen to be taking decisive action inside his own country when a court placed opposition leader Alexei Navalny under house arrest, banning him from using the internet or speaking to the media. Join us now to discuss these issues, Congressman Dana Rohrabacher. Dana, my old friend, it's so good to have you on Newsmax TV.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm glad to see that you're in the fight.
Dana, we talk about the fight, and of course, before going to Congress in your own right, you worked on the staff of President Reagan. This seems to be back to the future, where it's superpower politics. Back in the day, it was the USA versus the USSR, but now it's an emerging Russian Federation that's kind of seems to be a neo-Soviet Union. Is that an exaggeration of what's happening right now?
Yes, I do. I think it's, frankly, J.D., what we've had in the last 15 or 20 years would have very much disappointed Ronald Reagan as we demonized Putin and as basically Reagan, for example, Ronald Reagan saw a missile defense system. He was very committed to that. He made it very clear that if Russia would pull back from Eastern Europe, that we should enter into a partnership with them on missile defense. And we end up setting up a system that is aimed at Russian missiles, which was a hostile act. And it just seems that Ronald Reagan wanted peace with Russia. Ronald Reagan wanted the Russians to be our friend. He knew that it was communism that was the enemy and not Russia. And here you've got the churches are filled in Russia. You've got opposition people demonstrating all over the country. You've got opposition newspapers. And I think that the hostility that some of my own Ronald Reagan friends and which we were working to destroy the Soviet Union, I think that they never got over the Cold War is over, and that was not, and that's led, I think, to a situation like we have now. We should have, Ukraine, Russia, Western Europe, all of the people shouldn't have thought of that as being blocks of people. Instead, it should be, they should have all thought of themselves as one unit by now. Cold War's over.
Dana, let's switch regions. Talk now a little bit about Afghanistan. NATO has agreed to prepare for a complete pullout from that nation by the end of the year. What is that going to mean for that region?
Well, it will mean that Americans aren't being killed there, for the most important thing. But it will also mean the people of the region who are anti-radical Islamic will need to be doing the fighting themselves rather than having Americans doing the fighting. And the trouble it is we're giving billions of dollars to Pakistan, and Pakistan is the heart of the problem. They are, the government of Pakistan are the ones who are supporting radical Islam. The fact that Osama bin Laden had safe haven there for all those years is no accident. So as we leave, the Pakistanis, who were the ones who inserted the Taliban in power in the first place, they will again emerge, and it's up to us to not to support by sending troops, but try to find those people like we did before in the Northern Alliance, the people who are opposed to radical Islam, and try to give them a fighting chance to keep their country from being taken over by these awful, evil, radical Islamicists.
Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, you told me of not exactly personal contact back in the late 80s with Osama bin Laden, but now we're hearing news that the FBI allegedly had a human source in contact with bin Laden as far back as 1993, and that source learned of a plan by al-Qaeda to finance terror attacks on the U.S. Now, the 9/11 Commission had nothing on this. Really a two-part question. Number one, Dana, your personal glimpse, if you will, of Osama bin Laden, and number two, these reports about a 1993 contact.
I'm sure that's accurate. And during that time period, we were supporting, in fact, during the 1980s, when I was in the White House, we were supporting those elements that were fighting the Soviet troops and the Soviet occupation troops in Afghanistan. I, in fact, was in Afghanistan with Mujahideen combat troops who were fighting Russian troops. And as we went, and during the Reagan years, we provided a great deal of support for those insurgents, and they ultimately pushed the Soviets out. But I do remember that we did walk by one day on the way to the Battle of Jalalabad. I was with a Mujahideen combat group, and they told me, whatever you don't know, there'll be no English spoken for the next 4 hours. I had a beard, and I had the whole, no one could tell me the difference from the rest of the Mujahideen guys there. And as we walked by this camp, it was a bin Laden's camp, and they were living like kings, I might add. The rest of us were sleeping in gullies, and they had their SUVs and their safari tents and people cooking for them. And but Osama bin Laden was there, and I was told that if he knew I was an American and knew I was part of this group, he'd kill the whole group, and they'd attack us. So that's why I had to keep my mouth shut. But so we knew about him back then. I mean, they said this guy hates the Americans as much as he hates the communists. So we knew about him, and yet during my time and being involved with this, and in the early 90s as well, our government was providing aid to radical Islamicists who shouldn't have ever had one penny from us.
Dana Rohrabacher, we appreciate your take on this. Next time we get together, we've got to get to some of your personal stories involving the late, great Ronald Reagan. Thanks so much for your time and joining us today on America's Forum.
All right. God bless. Bye-bye.
Great guy. Congressman Dana Rohrabacher always has a lot to say, and of course was one of the guys who helped write speeches for Ronald Reagan back during his administration. You see our contacts on social media, your chance to get involved in the discussion. We look forward